the finest news station in North Dakota. This is KGFK TV News with Will Crawford, Sarah Kohler, Krill Wayford, and Kara Solar.
Hi! Our lead story today covers a spike in temperatures of the Earth's surface.
Wait, Sarah. Before we jump into this controversy, let's look at some of the data and history of how these surface temperatures are taken and recorded. Let's go to Kara Solar, our lead reporter who has been researching this topic.
Thanks, Will. It's also important to know where the data is coming from. So, let's start with a brief history of how temperature was recorded in the past. Data that goes the farthest back is proxy data, which dates back to 500,000 years ago. Proxy data is data that is derived from natural sources that includes tree rings, coral reef growth, fossils of animals and insects, and ice cores. It was in 1660 that the first thermometer was invented, and it was not until 1850 when the thermometer records started. Moving down the line, the first sea surface records used dates back to 1860, when ships were recording sea temperature. Now, there are buoys throughout the oceans recording many weather parameters of the sea. It was in 1890 that the Cooperative Observation Program started. This is a nationwide coverage of temperature observations voluntarily done by normal people like you and I. Then, in 1930, weather balloons, also known as radiosondes, were launched to record the temperature of the atmosphere. Satellites were also introduced in 1960, giving people a better perspective of how the Earth actually looks. Now, some surface observation systems. The ASOS and AWOS observation stations were introduced in 1995. They provided a much-needed global data. Now back to you, Will and Sarah, in the studio.
Thanks, Kara. It's funny that you should mention ASOS, as I used to work with them in the past. ASOS actually stands for Automated Surface Observation System.
Is it true that ASOS actually measures temperature?
Why, yes, they do. In fact, most of the ASOS stations are operated by the National Weather Service. They do maintenance inspections. They are also one of the most reliable temperature recorders we have.
So which one's better? Surface observation stations like ASOS or satellite?
Actually, that's a pretty good question. I think Krill would be able to explain this. Krill? Yes, I'm here.
Can you evaluate which one's better? Surface observations or satellites?
Why, yes, I can. But both have their own benefits and drawbacks. I'm not going to go into detail about them, but both are great ways to measure surface temperature. First, let's look at some data. As you can see, we have six different locations in the United States that my research group chose. We have Caribou, Maine, Jacksonville, Florida, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Grand Junction, Colorado, San Francisco, California, and also Hilo, Hawaii. My research group retrieved satellite data from NASA's Terra satellite and also data from their ASOS stations. The data they took was the surface temperature at each of the 6 locations since the year 2000. Let's look at some of the graphs. Starting with Minneapolis, Minnesota, as you can see, both the satellite and the ASOS recorded surface temperatures fluctuate at the same time, with the different seasons throughout the year. This indicates similar patterns and trends of the surface temperature. So although they don't record the exact same temperature, they show a very important correlation, as shown by the 6 different graphs of the 6 different locations. Now that you are more aware of how temperature is taken, let's look at some global data. Here we have a NASA animation of a mean calendar year anomaly with a running 5-year average. You may wonder what I have just said, so let me put this in simpler terms. What this NASA animation does is take the global average temperature between 1951 and 1980. This average temperature is considered the baseline temperature. The overall global temperature data set that was used dates back from 1880 all the way to 2007. Starting with 1880, a 5-year global average temperature is compared to the baseline temperature. If it is warmer than the baseline, then you'll see a yellow to red color. If the temperature is cooler than the baseline, you will see a blue to purple color. all indicated on the scale below me. Now moving forward in time, as you can see, the entire planet is not warming or cooling equally. Each part of the Earth is different. It is clearly evident that the global temperature is increasing with time, moving along into the 80s and into the 90s, ending in 2007 with a drastically warmer overall temperature. Now, let's look at a graph put together by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also known as the IPCC. This also is an anomaly of the global mean temperature, and as you can see, the temperature trend shows an increase. There is a pattern of increasing global temperature in the past 155 years. According to the IPCC, since the start of the satellite in 1979, both satellite and weather balloon measurements show that the global average surface temperature has increased significantly by 0.15 Celsius per decade. So hopefully you are now aware of how the global mean temperature is in fact increasing. Back to you, Will and Sarah, in the studio.
Wow, we've learned a lot today.
Yes, it is clearly evident that the surface temperatures are in fact increasing.
As shown by surface temperature measurements made by observation stations, it's pretty evident.
And don't forget about satellite data. Who knew that satellites could calculate the temperature by measuring the Earth's thermal radiation and wavelengths?
With all this data, it's significant to know the past temperature in order to predict the future temperatures of the Earth.
Well, that is our top story for today. Thank you for watching KGFK TV, and we'll see you tomorrow as we discuss the melting of Arctic sea ice.
Bye.